Hey there, I'm Julien, this is Angie, and today we are going to be cooking with plants. So Angie, can you just sort of talk about what you're cooking today, sort of what the original version of this dish is and how you made it plant-based?
Sure, yeah, we're making birria tacos. So traditionally that's done with mutton or lamb. It's from the Jalisco region of Mexico. And today we're gonna be doing a take on that where we use oyster mushrooms instead.
So I know there's a lot of mushrooms out there to choose from, so how do you choose oyster mushrooms versus the other varieties?
A lot of the mushrooms are great for the application we're doing. This one I really like because we can shred it and it kind of gives that look of like shredded meat.
Okay, so step one, what do we do?
Okay, step one, I'm gonna have you cut up this onion into fourths.
Okay, I know that sounds really easy, but what's the proper way to cut an onion?
Sure. So first thing you want to do is always put your thumb here on the bolster of the knife and your forefinger here so you have a nice firm grip on it. And then always keep your fingers kind of tucked under. Cut it in half. Once you have it on a flat surface, it won't roll around, so you don't have to worry about cutting yourself.
Okay, oh, and you're just cutting it into quarters.
Exactly.
See how I got you to do this for me?
And so, and then I'm gonna have you cut these also into fourths.
Okay. So just for a little background here, Angie and I have known each other for like 12 years. I live in Seattle, and Angie was a longtime chef in Seattle, and I was a food writer for like 15, 20 years. I still am a food writer. And I went vegan about 5 years ago, and Angie just went plant-based earlier this year. So she's basically teaching me how to cook, even though I have written 2 cookbooks and have written about the food industry for a really long time. I'm not that much of a cook, so when Angie told me that she went plant-based, I said, you need to start teaching me how to cook plant-based meals because Angie has always been one of my favorite chefs and all of her dishes are so flavorful. So that's how we got here. Okay, so how do these look? Do these need to be smaller?
Nope, that's perfect.
Okay.
And then so we're gonna put them on the sheet tray here.
Okay.
And then just a little drizzle of olive oil on top.
Right on.
Rub it in a little bit. And these are gonna go into a broiler on high. While those are broiling, we're gonna go ahead and hydrate our chilies.
Oh, forgot a couple of onions
Oh,
here.
whoops.
Oh, there we go.
So we've got 3 California chilies. We've got 1 pasilla.
And you already de-seeded all of these ahead of
so
time.
you want to cut them open and take the seeds out ahead of time, and it's pretty easy. You could just use scissors, cut them open, and then scrape the seeds out. And the seeds are where you're going to find most of your heat, that and like the veins that are inside of them. So we don't want this to be overly spicy. We just want the flavors of the chilies.
On a scale of like 1 to 10, how spicy are these tacos going to be?
They're going to be probably like a 6 or a 7. So they have some heat to them, but they're not going to like, you know,
they're not going to burn
make
your
you
mouth off.
sweat. Yeah. And I've got some hot water here, so I'm just going to pour it over them, let them hydrate.
You just pour enough water just to cover them?
Exactly.
Have your taste buds changed at all since you started eating plant-based?
You know, it's interesting because I thought I would really miss the meat and the meat flavors and the amino acids and things like that, but I've kind of learned to cook vegetables in a way that I can coax those same flavors out, and actually I don't miss meat at all.
Yeah, I would remember like when there was a time years ago where you would make Sunday supper and I would come over to your house and you always made the most amazing vegetables. It was always like Brussels sprouts or like, you know, winter vegetables, root vegetables, and I just thought any chef who can make vegetables taste good, in my mind, is a chef. Like, I think if you call yourself a chef and you don't know how to make vegetables and plant-based foods taste good, then you still have some learning to do. But even before you went plant-based, you made all of that stuff taste good. So it feels like this type of cooking would be a semi-easy transition.
Yeah, and
you.
I've always loved, like I love eating a lot of different vegetables. So for me, it was, you know, a pretty easy transition. I haven't changed in terms of vegetable prep.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
By the way, we're drinking margaritas that Angie made earlier. This is our second one. They're delicious. And we'll put the recipes for all of this down below the video.
Yes. So once these have hydrated and once our vegetables have broiled, what we're gonna do is actually put them into the blender.
Vitamix.
The Vitamix blender, yes. And I've got some vegetable stock that I made here. We're gonna put 1 cup of stock in there.
But you can buy pre-made stock, right?
You can buy pre-made stock, or some of the little bouillons are actually really good. Like I like the Boo brand ones.
Boo bouillon.
Exactly. Have you used those?
No, I haven't.
They're great.
I don't do a lot of cooking.
Oh, that's right.
At all.
Until now.
Until now. So I'm always curious though, when you're looking at vegetable stock, like how do you know if you're buying a good vegetable stock or not?
You want to look for the salt. So you want one that's lower in sodium, just because that sodium's going to kind of take over your recipe.
So we have the broth.
Yep.
The chilies have been soaking.
Yep. About
What next?
5 minutes. The chilies are nice and soft. You can feel them. And they're going to go.
Let me feel one.
Yeah, feel one.
Oh yeah, okay.
So they're hydrated. They're going to go into the Vitamix with the broth.
Is there any reason to save the liquid?
You know, I have not found a reason yet, but I wouldn't rule it out because I do love using everything.
Yeah. Okay, so we have vegetable stock and the hydrated peppers in your Vitamix.
Correct. And then these vegetables are probably nicely boiled or broiled by now. You want to get some good char on those. So a little, don't be afraid of a little bit of black.
They sure do shrink a lot.
That's where they do shrink a lot. That's where you're gonna get your flavor from. Is that nice caramelized flavor.
Okay, so if you don't have a Vitamix, is like a regular KitchenAid mixer good enough? Because I'm one of those people that I would love nothing more than a Vitamix, but I know they're not cheap. So how do you balance that?
Do a good KitchenAid or a good, you know, different kind of blender, or also a food processor will work for this, because we don't need to get it completely smooth. We just need to get it as smooth as possible.
Okay.
But for getting things really, really smooth, you want to use Vitamix.
Like if you're making soups,
yes,
it's worth the investment.
Totally.
Okay.
Yep. Or anything pureed, like pureed, really smooth, you know, vegetable purees and stuff like that. I recommend a Vitamix. So once we have that in there, we're gonna add our spices. So we've got 1 tablespoon of cumin. We have a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. So not that much cinnamon, just because it can tend to overpower. We have a teaspoon of oregano.
And this is all ground.
It's all ground. These are 3 whole cloves, which will get chopped up in our Vitamix. If you have, you know, a lesser blender, I would use ground cloves.
Okay, good point.
Because you don't want any chunks of clove in there.
Yeah,
They are
that's
really
gross.
strong. And actually, we're gonna add a little bit of oil. Say that's like a tablespoon. And then we're just gonna put this on high and blend it up. Turn it loud for a minute. So I blended it where it's not completely smooth, but fairly smooth.
It's kind of like a romesco sauce.
Exactly. So,
Oh, it smells really good. Oh, that smells really good.
really flavorful.
Yeah.
So that's gonna go into our pot here, along with the remaining cup of vegetable stock, if you wanna grab that.
Just pour it all in.
Pour it all in. Yep. And then we'll just give it a little stir. You want to bring this up to like a high simmer.
Okay.
You
So
don't
that'd be
want-
like a medium-high heat?
Exactly. Medium-high heat, and you don't want to rolling boil with this.
Can I put this away?
You can put that away. So while that simmers, we're gonna go ahead and start prepping our mushrooms.
All right.
Oh, I forgot, we're gonna put our 3 bay leaves in there as well. So for the mushrooms, what we're gonna do is, the base of these ones have like a bit of a, kind of a woody stem on them. So most of the time you can just pull them apart.
So you don't want the woody stem.
Not as much, just because the texture is not so nice for what we're doing.
Is it like a bitter flavor?
Not really a bitter flavor, but more of a chew than you want.
I got it.
So what we're gonna do with these is just pull them apart.
Oh, got it.
And nature makes it pretty easy for us to kind of pull them apart.
So I know a lot of times when you go to vegan restaurants and stuff, or even like vegan snacks that you can find in the store, a lot of people use shiitake. Are these comparable to shiitake mushrooms, or do you think they're superior?
Shiitakes have a really, really nice earthy, mushroomy flavor that's really great for substituting for meat type of flavor and texture. But this one I could shred like this, so it looks more like meat once it's cooked.
Got it, okay.
So I think for this application, I love this mushroom, or like a maitake mushroom.
So there's like a strong visual component to using this.
Exactly.
Okay. Have you found, like, going plant-based, that it was a pretty easy transition for you? Because I know you ate and cooked pretty much everything back in the day.
I thought it would be a harder transition than it actually has ended up being, because I didn't realize how creative I could get with the vegetables. And also, I've been cooking for, over 20 years now.
Yeah.
So it's like, I needed something new to push the boundaries a little bit.
So what do you say to people who say, I would love to try a plant-based diet, but I don't even know where to start? Because I think a general assumption with plant-based cooking is that you're just eating lettuce and carrots and vegetables, but like plant-based isn't vegetables, it's things like potatoes and starches, rice, quinoa, oatmeal, there's vegan pizza, there's vegan everything. So how do you kind of start that transition if, say, maybe you're not a professional chef?
For me, I think once I realized I could make almost any recipe that I would have made with meat, now with vegetables and with, tofu and seitan and things like that.
Yeah.
It's become a challenge for me to be like, can I take this, meat recipe and turn it into something plant-based?
Yeah, because if you don't like the taste, being a chef, no one else is gonna like the taste of that.
So at first it was hard to wrap my mind around, but now it's kind of like, I just look for recipes I want to make, and then I'm like, how can I alter that to make it plant-based?
Yeah, and the good thing about being plant-based right now is that there's so many plant-based foods and cheeses that melt like cheese, taste like cheese, look like cheese. I mean, it is a fast evolving industry.
It really is.
So even unlike just 2 years ago,
it's 6 months ago.
There's a vegan plant-based substitute for every meat dish at this point.
Which certainly makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
And then it's just a lot of experimenting. So finding out where you can get those flavors and textures that you would normally get from meat, where you can get them from plants. So I use tons of cashew. Cashew is everything in vegan cooking.
That's a popular base. Is it just the creaminess that it gives cheeses and sauces?
Exactly, yeah. And so it's easy to replace that creaminess and that fattiness with a cashew, for example. So, okay, we've got these shredded. I left them sort of kind of bigger pieces because I like the texture and the look of them in the tacos.
So let me tell you one thing. So the dishes that I have had, especially taco dishes, there's a vegan taco place in Seattle, and one of their tacos is mushroom based. But sometimes you don't really know what you're getting, and you bite into something that has mushrooms, and it is so hard to eat and kind of either tough or stringy, and it just is challenging to eat. And so I'm always a little, as much as I love mushrooms, when I see mushrooms as a taco filling, I'm just like, okay, either this is gonna be delicious or like really challenging to not just like get all over myself. Because
Sure.
it can be messy.
Yeah, it can't be messy. So that's why we were careful to take out the woody bits and, you know, shred this enough to make it, you know,
Tender.
tender. Exactly. So we're gonna need those spices over there.
All right.
And what we're gonna do is we're gonna add 2 tablespoons of cider vinegar to these. This is gonna be our marinade for the mushrooms, and it's gonna really build our flavors. This is 2 teaspoons of garlic powder. I love garlic powder for cooking, by the way. This is a tablespoon of umami seasoning, and this one I got at Trader Joe's, and it is it's mushrooms and like dried vegetables, and really gives I think there's sea salt in it as well.
Yeah, I
but
have
it
that.
boosts up the mushroom flavor a little bit, which I love.
Because in order to get the mushrooms to absorb flavor, because it's pretty much like eating a sponge.
It's a sponge.
You really have to build those layers of flavor.
Yeah. So you want to actually season mushrooms fairly aggressively because they are such a sponge. I added a couple teaspoons of salt. Now I'm gonna add about 2 tablespoons of oil in there. And some black pepper. I like coarse ground black pepper.
Oh yeah.
And then I'm just gonna let that marinate in there.
How many mushrooms, is that like a half a pound or less than that?
This was about a pound. So we're gonna let those marinate. We've got our sauce simmering over here. And this sauce needs to simmer for about 30 minutes.
That smells really good. I can smell that from here.
And next step is we're gonna cook the mushrooms.
Did you already polish off your second marg?
I did actually.
I'm behind.
I was
This is
thirsty.
literally like the only thing I've had outside of a Cliff Bar today, so this is special.
All right, so next step is I've got our pan heating up here. For mushrooms, I always start on a high heat because they have so much water and liquid in them that when I put them in, they're immediately gonna drop the heat of the pan, which is gonna affect their brown.
Okay.
So you want mushrooms always to get a nice brown color on them. So think high heat, and also be conscious of not overcrowding the pan because that's just gonna cause all the liquid to come out and prevent you from getting a nice brown.
Okay.
So I put my oil in, I'm gonna heat it up just briefly. You can kind of tell by the way the oil moves around the pan how hot it is. So when it moves really freely around the pan, you know it's nice and hot.
When it starts shrinking up.
Yep. And I'm using a non-stick pan for this because I like using non-stick with mushrooms.
And that's also a sign, like when you drop the mushrooms in and they sizzle.
They should sizzle.
Okay. Why do you like using nonstick with mushrooms?
Mushrooms tend to stick a lot to stainless in particular.
Like once they lose all their water?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so with this, I know they're not gonna stick and they're gonna get nice and brown. Also love using cast iron for mushrooms.
Are you picky about the kind of olive oil that you cook with?
It depends on the application. So this oil actually is canola and olive oil blend, which means I get the nice flavor from the olive oil, but I get the high cooking temperature of the canola oil.
Okay, I don't think a lot of people understand that. So like canola oil, you can heat at a higher temperature and it won't burn, whereas olive oil is really good for like sauteing, but it's not good for like high heat.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So I like to use a blend or just straight canola oil. I use grapeseed oil a lot because it has a really high smoke point. So just kind of depends on what you're doing in the application. Straight olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, I'll use it for low temps or also for salads and things like finishing, things like that.
I think a lot of people are under the impression that extra virgin olive oil is somehow like the superior oil that you can be cooking with. Because the Food Network, like the Rachel Ray's, it's always EVOO, right? But realistically, that's not what you usually want to be cooking with. That's more of like a finishing oil.
Exactly. That's not your workhorse in the kitchen in terms of cooking oils.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
That is important. So I'm adding these slowly to the pan because I have kind of a small pan here and I don't want to overcrowd it. I want these mushrooms to be able to brown.
Okay.
And I'm not gonna early on, I'm not gonna move them around too much because I want to form a bit of a crust on the bottom of them.
Right on.
And that crispy bits is what's gonna kind of resemble, your crispy bits of meat in
the
a
char.
taco. Exactly.
Yeah, the char is always the best part of everything, regardless of what you're cooking. That's where all the flavor is.
Yep, I agree. And that's also one of the ways that I've been able to kind of make vegan friendly.
Fool yourself into thinking you're eating meat.
Exactly.
I get it, totally.
Yeah, and having cooked meat for so many years, it translates very easily.
Yeah, so what are the benefits that you've noticed not eating meat and swapping your meat with, say, mushrooms, tofu, seitan? Do you feel like you're missing out on anything? What are the pros?
I don't. I mean, grocery bill for one.
It's cheaper.
It's so much cheaper.
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't have to worry about storing meat in my refrigerator or having it drip on anything.
It's not going to go bad.
Yeah, exactly. So that one's huge. Other than that, I just feel great. I feel like I'm getting all these extra vitamins and nutrients.
And it's not taking away flavor when you're eating it.
No, as long as you're using recipes that, you're still building up flavors,
yeah,
you're not losing anything.
I also think there's this assumption that cooking plant-based foods is somehow out of a lot of people's price range. And I will say, processed vegan food is expensive. Mm-hmm. When you're buying high-end cheeses and fake meats and, oat milk isn't cheap. But,
right.
My staples at home, I eat a lot of potatoes, brown rice, I do roast vegetables from time to time, tofu, oatmeal, all of that stuff is so inexpensive. And it lasts a really long time, and the shelf life is long, and it's not gonna you don't have to use it up in a week.
Yep.
And I just feel like, when people start talking about how expensive it is to eat a plant-based diet, they're under this assumption that everyone's buying these brand processed packaged foods like Impossible burgers, and that's an option, but just regular eating is.
Right.
But I do think it is a lot less expensive to eat plant-based.
Oh, definitely. That, and if you're eating things like lentils and garbanzo
yes!
beans,
oh my
which
gosh,
cost
yes,
nothing.
Yeah, make your own hummus too. It's
yeah.
so easy to make
and
your own
it's so
hummus.
much better.
Yes.
You don't have all that citric acid and stuff.
Yes,
in there.
and you can add as much garlic as you want,
yep.
and really just make it to fit your taste buds.
Exactly. The mushrooms are getting nice and brown. We want them to get a little bit crispy on the bottom. You can see the color there.
I was gonna say, at what point do they become more tender than tough? I mean, because it's a thing to overcook mushrooms to the point where they become like jerky.
Especially with oyster mushrooms, they become very dry and chewy.
That's what I'm saying. Eating mushroom tacos, it's like those mushrooms sometimes have just been so overcooked that you're sitting there chewing them for 20 minutes, and it's just a nightmare.
Right. So you want to go to a point where they're not getting dry and crispy.
Okay.
You want them browned but still tender.
Can I eat one?
Yeah, of course.
Maybe this
that
guy?
One right there.
This one?
Mm-hmm.
They kind of look like a mix between artichoke hearts and caramelized onions.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really good. That is really good.
Can you taste all the seasonings in there?
Yes.
So, because I'm trying to avoid overcrowding my pan, of course, I'm gonna just add them in stages.
Oh, I'm so excited. Oh, this is so good. Yeah, I feel like maybe that Trader Joe's seasoning that you use, the umami, I think that makes a big difference. I've sprinkled that on vegetables before I roasted them before, but I've never, you used quite a bit more of the seasoning than I've ever used, but that's really delicious. And the garlic powder, you can taste all of it.
Yeah, garlic powder, I think, is key in a vegan kitchen.
Ultimately, you know if you have a really good dish when you don't have to add like a bunch of seasoning.
Exactly.
I love hot sauce, but I tend to use it more on dishes that need flavor.
Right.
Hot sauce should just be an accompaniment.
Right.
It shouldn't be something you add because what you're eating doesn't taste like anything.
Exactly.
I'm excited for this.
Good.
This is so good. I'm gonna have another one.
Yeah, do. So these just need a couple more minutes.
It's really hot.
And I'm gonna grab a bowl to put them in.
Do you mind me asking, like, how much does a pound of oyster mushrooms cost in Hollywood?
They were a little over $6 a pound.
Okay, that's not bad.
Yeah, and you have to imagine like a pound of oyster mushrooms is quite a bit, you know, it's a couple handfuls.
And how many does this feed typically?
So with this amount, I could make probably 10 tacos.
Okay.
And they're good sized tacos, so, you know, you can feed a family
Easily.
easily.
And you don't need very many mushrooms to get that flavor.
Right.
You just need a couple.
Yeah. And there's also going to be cheese in these tacos, so we're going to have that flavor on top of the mushrooms.
So I know that when it comes to melty cheese,
Yeah.
you love chow cheese.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like shredded cheese, so chow doesn't make shredded cheese. But if you just need sort of like an affordable plant-based cheese to sprinkle on tacos, what do you like to use?
I love the Trader Joe's brand.
I haven't tried that.
It's an almond
Yeah,
mozzarella. That one melts the best in my opinion.
Okay, oh, that's really good to know. Like
Yeah.
better than the Daya or any of that?
The Daya is a bit more dry.
Okay.
The Trader Joe's one is a bit more creamy, and I use it a lot on pizzas. I like to make the Detroit style pizzas where you like put it up against the edge of the pan and get that crisp. And that's the one that I found that best works for that application.
Okay, we'll be making pizzas eventually.
Yeah, we do need to
I'm
do a
stoked.
pizza show.
So I love making like individual pizzas, like just getting like the dough and then just making little tiny things. But I love the Miyokos.
Oh yeah, that one's good
Their
too.
mozzarella. I don't love their mozzarella just to eat plain because to me it does not taste like mozzarella.
Yeah.
But when you're melting it on a pizza, it is perfection.
And it gets nice and brown too.
Yes.
Some of them do not get that brown color.
Agreed.
Which
Agreed.
I'm always looking for the ones that brown and melt like regular
Like
cheese.
regular dairy.
Yep. And not all of them are created equal.
No, they're not. You got to experiment.
Exactly.
There's some cheeses that are still on the market that were around in like, 20 years ago that my mom used to buy when she started transitioning away from dairy. And they're still there and they're good. They're like almond cheeses. But by no means are those the best options on the market.
Right.
There's so many options with cheese. You have like almond base, cashew base, like, and every brand is completely different. It's like, you really do yourself a favor and try each brand and see what works for you. And some cheeses are really good, but the color might not be great, and others have like really great color, but the flavor might not be what you're looking for. And it's really like a matter of just experimenting.
Yeah, that, and I haven't found one that's great raw yet.
Nope, me neither. Me neither.
All right, so I've got some nice brown color on these.
That's a really great color. It's like caramelized onions.
Exactly. I'm gonna pull them out, put them in this bowl for now. I'm gonna put my pan back on the heat, and now we're gonna start assembling some tacos.
All right.
So, we're gonna put a touch of oil, say like a tablespoon of oil into the pan. I have some really nice corn tortillas that I actually got here in LA at the Northgate Market yesterday. Give me the tongs.
You
there.
plop them right into the sauce.
I plop them right into the sauce.
Oh,
This is a
sheesh.
style of taco where it's often called a red taco. So it kind of reminds me of like enchilada meets like taco meets quesadilla in my mind. Put them in the hot pan. And I'm just gonna grab the cheese really quick.
This is so exciting to me. I have never seen this preparation before.
Yeah, it is exciting. This is one you'll see a lot in LA, but not so much in other regions yet.
So today you are using the Dia mozzarella because that's what you had access to today.
Exactly.
But you prefer the Trader Joe's?
I like the Trader Joe's or
Mozzarella shreds.
Yep.
Okay.
But this is what Whole Foods had.
And it's totally fine. This is
Yeah,
like a
Dia
great
is
melty
good.
cheese. It is.
It will melt. So I like to put the cheese down first because I like to get it a little bit melty. Then I'll put the mushroom.
Wow, you assemble it all in the pan.
Yep.
Okay.
And would you mind handing me a little spatula from in there? That little silver one.
Oh, this one.
Yep.
Oh, cute.
That
Okay.
cute little guy. And then I'll let it cook for a minute.
It's still on high heat.
Still on high heat. And this is kind of like a wet taco.
So this isn't something you pick up and eat. This is like knife and fork taco.
You can pick it up, but you might want to use a knife and fork, depending on how
Definitely.
messy you want to get.
Depending on how, are you eating with other people or by yourself?
Right, exactly. It's kind of sticking a little bit, so I'm going to add a touch more oil. And I personally like it when the cheese gets on the pan a little bit and you get a little extra crispy bits.
Yep, same.
So I'm gonna let it kind of crisp up on one side and then I'll flip it over. And this is definitely a messier style of taco.
So what is the point of, like, what if you just wanted to make like regular tacos and then just use this for like maybe like a drizzle sauce? Could you do that too?
You can do that too. Traditionally, this is served where you then dip the tacos into more of the sauce.
So like you're gonna dip that into more of the sauce.
Yeah,
But if
exactly.
you wanted to do like a different version, you could use this as like a sauce you put on the taco.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
It's really versatile. That's the fun thing about tacos too, is there's so many different types and from every region has their own type of tacos. You can get creative with it as well.
Okay.
I mean, there's people doing tons of different types of fusion tacos. Just have fun with it and figure out what you like and go from there. I like experimenting and kind of pushing boundaries and then seeing what you can come up with.
It looks really good.
Thank you.
Where did you come up with this inspiration?
Well, I have been kind of obsessing over these tacos for a while, and so, but typically they're made with traditionally made with lamb or mutton, but a lot of times here in the States you'll see them made with beef. And so I just kind of wanted to come up with a version where you could eat them plant-based.
Yeah.
And also, oftentimes, you know, when you dip the tortilla in the sauce that's been braising with the meat, you get that whole other layer of complexity.
Yes.
And so I wanted to be able to replace those fatty flavors that you would get.
I'm like, what can we eat while we wait for the food to be done cooking? God, those mushrooms are so good. Do you feel like there's a stigma, so like associated with being plant-based? I know for me, being a food writer for almost 20 years, like I don't really tell a lot of people that I am vegan now because I feel like in a lot of people's minds, they, to them that means I don't eat food anymore. Or like, oh, Julien doesn't like food anymore. Like, I love food more now than I ever did. I feel like more interested in it. Do you feel that way being a chef? Like you can't like bring up the fact that you yourself are plant-based because people are gonna there's like a stigma associated with that.
Yeah, for a long time I hid it.
Yeah,
I
same.
didn't come out as plant-based for probably 5-6 months.
So weird to say that.
Just because I didn't want people to discredit me as a chef.
Right.
Like I know I can cook
Yeah.
meats, and you've had meats that I've prepared.
They're fantastic. Amazing.
And so I didn't want people to think I was a one-trick pony, essentially. So I kind of like kept that to myself for the longest time. And then after a while, I was like, I don't really care anymore. This is what I'm enjoying doing right now.
Yeah.
This is how I'm living, and take it or leave it.
And there's
type
more of an
thing.
educational aspect, I think, because there is a gap, an educational gap between plant-based cooking and people's perception of it. I think there is a lot to contribute to that realm as opposed to just the regular cooking that you were doing. There's not a lot of education that comes with like, you know, braised meats.
Right.
But when it comes to plant-based, I feel like people have a lot of questions about it and want to know about it, and there's more room to educate people about it, especially people who may be, you know, on the fence of like, do I want to go down this route or not? I kind of do, but I don't really know how to cook food and what does that mean?
Or what to eat.
Yeah.
Also, one thing I really love doing is making food that, you know, meat eaters will still love.
Yes.
And for me, that's like the fun challenge is where they're like, oh, I don't think I would like that or whatever, and then they try it and they don't even miss it at all.
Right. You're like, I won that round.
Exactly.
I knew you would love it, and you did.
Yeah, so for me, that's a fun challenge. And that's kind of how I look at cooking vegan food is where nobody's gonna miss anything here.
Right. That's how you know you did a good job.
Yep.
When there's nothing lacking in the meal that they're eating.
Right.
And
Yep.
they're gonna feel great after eating it.
Yep.
They're not gonna be weighed down by, you know, whatever.
That's one thing I've noticed is I haven't felt weighed down after a meal.
Yeah.
The way I did before.
Yeah. I can eat like a big, like hotel pan of roasted vegetables. Like, you know, the broccoli and potatoes and tofu and onions and not feel gross afterwards.
Yeah.
Like I don't feel full.
Right.
Like I might not be hungry halfway through, but I never feel
Overstuffed.
I never feel stuffed ever.
Same. Which I love. And I love like being able to try everything without feeling disgusting.
It's always a plus.
So I've gotten like a little bit of crisp on these. These aren't gonna crisp up the way that you would think, just because they are have been in the sauce, so
Yeah.
they do stay a little bit tender, but they've got a little bit of crisp on them.
Yeah, these are not hard tacos.
Right, no, they're definitely not hard tacos. I love the little crunchy bits.
Oh, they smell so good. These are corn tortillas that
These
you
are
use.
corn tortillas that were handmade here in LA.
Do you prefer corn tortillas over wheat tortillas?
I like them both. I like them both. It depends on the application. I tend to use more corn tortillas, but I also love a good flour tortilla, especially a
Flour. Sorry, I said
homemade
wheat.
one.
I meant flour. Same
Same
thing.
thing, yeah.
Margaritas.
So what we're gonna do now is we've got 3 tacos here that have been like beautifully pan crisped up. I like to kind of open them up a little bit and then just stuff a little bit of onions in there. And raw onions are delicious.
Are there any onions that you would never really cook tacos with?
Maybe red onions. I like to use pickled red
Why not?
onions.
Why not red onions?
They've got a very like strong, overpowering flavor when they're raw. Pickled red onions, I'll use tons, especially in like versions. Like I do like a Baja cauliflower kind of fish taco style, and I'll use pickled red onions in there, which is delicious.
I think a lot of people cook with red onions because it just gives like an extra pop of color, but they don't really consider the flavor that it's contributing.
Yeah, you just have to be careful in terms of that. You don't want to overpower things with that raw onion flavors
Yeah.
so much.
So I love the look of cilantro. I hate cilantro.
What?
Well, you know what? Actually, I like cilantro in like salsas and when it's combined in things.
Uh-huh.
I think with like tacos, it's good. But my mom and me, like we both, it's definitely hereditary.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's like the one food that we just like, oh, there's like, we can detect like the smallest amount of cilantro in our food.
It's actually conditioned, and it is hereditary, so
Yeah.
I
This looks-
apologize for
No,
that.
I think this is gonna be great because I think with all the other flavors, the cilantro is gonna fit really nicely in there. This looks beautiful.
Thank you.
And it's so
then
simple.
What we do is a little bit of the sauce on the side
Oh,
for
yeah. Dipping.
extra dipping.
Dipping and drizzling.
Yep.
I love this.
Dipping and drizzling. And so,
Sweet. There we go. Would you ever put this on the same plate, or
Yep.
is that too crowded?
this bowl was a little too big to put on the same plate, but normally, yeah, you would serve that on the same plate and just kind of like dip at your own leisure.
I love
and dig
it.
And like I said, it is not a clean taco to
Okay,
eat.
so we got a little, and now we're going to eat this.
I like to put a little lime. Do
Oh
you want
yeah.
lime?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I'm just gonna pick these up
Yeah,
too.
pick these up.
This, you can't eat these with a knife and fork.
No,
That's
no.
stupid.
Nobody does.
Plus, I think once they cool a little bit, they're like,
A little more manageable.
yeah.
All right, and then you can dip if you want.
Yay. Cheers.
I'm gonna dip. Cheers.
They're really good.
Really good.
These are totally manageable. Like those mushrooms aren't like out of control. They're really tender. They're not super chewy.
Maybe not a first date taco.
Not unless you already know your person.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta know your person before you dig into these on a date.
I don't even mind the cilantro on these because
Oh,
there's
good.
so many other flavors.
Did you get all the spices and the sauces?
And the cheese and you can taste everything. Oh my god, this is also like the first food I've had all day. This is good. After 2 margaritas and a Cliff Bar.